What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Tuesday night college basketball betting preview. I'm your host, Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my co-host, Mike Calabrese and BJ Cunningham. Gentlemen, I took the day off yesterday. It should be a national holiday. I think in 2027, I think it's going to be President's Day as follows the Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure. I think that's 2027. Although Valentine's Day being 2 days after the Super Bowl is not ideal from an attention standpoint. I wish I had more energy to show my wife today after the weekend. But Mike, how's it going?
It's going all right. I'm still recovering emotionally from the Super Bowl. As I said on Twitter, the Eagles didn't lose because of that holding call, but the whole crowd where it's like, if you don't want to get called for a penalty, don't commit one. Those people can absolutely kick rocks. I hate them. And we're going to see it during March Madness. You're going to see it in every other sport. When you essentially do what, the NHL does, which down the stretch, don't let pivotal moments get, overshadowed by ticky-tack calls. That's the only sport that gets it. Every other sport is susceptible to it. So you're just going to have to accept it. There's going to be some March Madness games where it's the ref show all over again. And then also in general, it's kind of a wacky month for me. I cover all kinds of things. I don't know if you guys know, I worked in politics out of college. I actually worked for Mario Gabelli's hedge fund for a cup of coffee. I was a junior political analyst. So Nikki Haley running for president as of this morning. So I updated some odds there.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, so she's in the game. Her DeSantis Trump should be interesting. So anyone who's looking for political futures, feel free to hit me up on social media.
What are those odds right now?
She is plus 810 to win the Republican nomination, and then it's more or less a coin flip between DeSantis and Trump. What's interesting is that Trump, being the way that he is, he's going to go so hard at DeSantis. He's already said some incredibly outlandish things about him. So do they end up in kind of a death spiral and she just steps over them? We'll see. But she's never lost an election, and she's a fundraising behemoth. So she'll definitely raise enough money to stay in it. And the very first or second Republican primary is in South Carolina, her home state. So she may get a little bump there at the beginning.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've as far as the Super Bowl and that call, I mean, I've stayed consistent all year. I mean, I get the hey, it's a penalty, so call a penalty. But I had a lot of money on the Chiefs. I wanted the Chiefs to win against the Bengals, and I would not have called. I disagreed with calling that. I know it was a personal foul, and it was kind of a late hit on Mahomes, but it wasn't malicious. Mahomes kind of flopped as well, and it was, the defender's trying to go to the Super Bowl. I don't decide a game there. There's a time and place to throw certain flags. I also don't throw the flag on the holding there. It was a game where they were letting most things go, which made me happy because Carl Cheffers is known as a flag happy ref. And a lot of times in these big games, you do see the officials just, Super Bowls, championships, they'll say, I don't want to get involved for a reason, let the players decide it. So, yeah, that was a tough way. The game's never one play, but you hate it to end like that. So sorry for your loss. And you almost were off to a hot start with Gainwell, and then
I figured that the universe was against me on that review, and all of us have been in the game long enough. As soon as I saw it live, I was like, oh, they're going to take that away from me for sure. It's going to be, a tenth of an inch, and he clearly wasn't in, so it was the right call. But I agree with you, Stuck. It's like the Super Bowl wasn't determined on that one play. I think the Chiefs play better. They deserve to win. It won't be a loss that haunts me. But in general, I think the fact that that's a penalty in the current NFL is the reason why a third of the NFL throws for 4,000 yards a game or 4,000 yards a season. It's just the rules are so bent, which they've done over time in favor of the offense. They could recalibrate it. They could say offensive holdings also a loss of down, or do anything to help the defense. But I don't know who the defensive coaches are on the rules committee in the offseason, but they've just been getting absolutely caved in avalanche style on all these rules in the last 15 years.
Yeah, people love to talk in absolutes, but two things can be true. That didn't decide the whole game, but you also could still be upset about it. We'll see if they ban the quarterback sneak push. We'll see another play that helps the offense, but I don't think they should. It's just an advantage that you're using, but we'll see. BJ, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Not much. Two things. So the Mahomes play against the Bengals. It's funny you mentioned that because if you show the down the sideline angle of that, it was like foot hit. It was so close where they,
Yep.
they show it just from essentially, the camera angle that it normally is. It's like, oh yeah, it looks like it was so late. But if you look at the reverse angle, it was like he took a step and then he got like it was basically like bang bang play. So of course it looks bad from that angle. But
And Mahomes is the king of faking going out of bounds, and then
exactly
he knows people can't hit him, and then ducks inside.
But they can reach the ball out and get 3 or 4 extra yards. But, oh god!
And every yard in that case could decide if you're going to the Super Bowl. Could decide you're in the Super Bowl. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, one play doesn't decide it. It was an amazing game. The Chiefs got very fortunate with the long halftime with Mahomes getting his ankle hurt and everything for him to get prepared. But yeah, no, fantastic game. I live in Chiefs country, so everybody was very happy down here. But it's funny. I was talking to my brother-in-law. This is his first year ever like following the NFL, like watching every game. He's like, oh, I'll become a Chiefs fan. They're the closest team to where we live and everything like that. And I was like, so how was your experience the first year following the NFL? He goes, I actually had a lot of fun. Like the Chiefs were good. We just won the Super Bowl. It was a lot of fun. I'm like, well, let's talk in like 4 or 5 years when, maybe Mahomes is not at this elite level, which he probably will be, but it's just funny.
According to Travis Kelce, he picked a huge underdog that nobody had faith in.
Right.
Probably my number one quickest way to turn me into just a rage monster. Bryce Young did it during the Heisman season.
Georgia just did it.
Nobody.
Everybody counted out Georgia.
Everybody said we were going to be 7-5. That was one of the quotes. No one said Georgia was going to be 7-5. All right, quick show today. We will recap the weekend that was. We will then give our best bets for Tuesday night. A little rant. I'll start with a rant. So I had the worst Saturday ever for multiple reasons. You got to listen to my Saturday. You can't even picture a worse Saturday. So I've never missed a college basketball Saturday slate in my entire life. And so number one, my plan was, so I had to go to Cleveland for the Super Bowl event. And speaking of which, getting excited about like a play with Gainwell, Colin Wilson was there, and he went. There was the Chiefs have scooped up a fumble, right, and then went to the end zone, but it was clearly not a catch, right? Was it the Chiefs that did that? The Eagles, and then they overturned it. It was clearly
the same defender, I think. Was it Bolden on both of them?
Yeah. But Colin had like 100-1. 2 defensive touchdowns in the game. And he went and he was sprinting up and down the bar, and I had to go grab him like, dude, no, I think they're gonna overturn it. So that was a brutal moment of pure elation that turned to oh no. But anyway, so I had to go up to Cleveland. So my plan was, I live in Lexington. It's like a 5-hour drive, and there's no direct flight. So like flying is just a nightmare. So my plan, whenever I go up to Cleveland, sometimes what I've done before is I have a really good friend in Cincinnati who comes with me. So I just drive to Cincy, meet him, and then he drives the rest of the way, the 3.5, 4 hours. So my plan was I had to do my Big Bets on Campus show Saturday morning at 10:30. Then I leave at 11, get up to Cincinnati by around noon, and then he drives the rest of the way. I can watch all the games on my phone, have my laptop too, and then we'll get there for the 3 or 4 o'clock games. Well, he gets sick as hell and can't go. So I'm like, all right, I got to drive by myself. So I have like a thing on the car where I just post up my phone. This isn't a safe driving podcast, and I just would have a game streaming and was driving up the boring drive, and I had to do it myself. So I have about between noon and 4 o'clock, especially at 2 o'clock, I had about 7 games going, and they were all close the whole way. And then there was a couple of really bad picks, and then just every possible team that could have melted down in the final 5 minutes did. So but I have to be watching all of these. Like there's now, they're all ending at 2, and some are ending at 3, then they're all ending at 4. So I'm stopping at every possible rest area. So it just says next rest area 40 miles. I'm getting off that rest area, and then I'm stopping and then watching.
I've done this games many times before. This is a classic degenerate move. I'm
losing every single bet, and it took me 7 hours to get all the way up. I made a 5-hour drive, 7 hours, and lost every single bet. So it was a horrendous day. I think my 9 favorite bets I went 0-9 on. I think I finished like 4-13 on the day. And so it was my worst Saturday since last February. And so a couple things here. Then I had Oregon late at night. A couple people are like messaging me like, you're having an awful day. You're due. I'm loading up on Oregon. I said, no, please. These are the worst things that you can do. Number one, you just have to swallow days like this. I haven't had a bad Saturday all year. College football, college basketball. I've been petrified of it coming, but they're going to come. And I haven't had a bad variance day. Getting very lucky, very fortunate. And you never remember the lucky ones, right? You look back and then you watch them and you say, oh, cool, that was cool. On to the next one. You remember days like this, and that's why it feels like you're always on the wrong side of these close games and these meltdowns. But I've seen it way more often than not. When you're having a terrible day, that last game of the night does not go your way more often than not. Like sometimes it's just not your day. Do not chase that game. So you're down a bunch. And this is why it's all about behavior finance, not chasing, not tilting. And this is the hard part and what costs most people money when betting on sports. Don't chase that late game if you had a rough day. It will end. Sometimes it'll work, and then say it works a couple times, but then you're getting in the mindset of doing that. And no matter what you're up or down, then you're going to start doing it, and it's only eventually going to end very poorly. So don't chase something. I was as sick as anyone on days like that. I know a ton of people are following me. I'm losing a ton of money, but you got to eat those days sometimes, and just don't chase the late game. So yeah, that was my Saturday. Couldn't even watch all the games in rest areas, just begging for a win. I remember at one point I was in a rest area at an Arby's. There was like an Arby's and then a dumpster. And then I was watching this Coastal Carolina completely melt down. They were up by like 5 with 5 to go. Didn't cover 7. I think they lost 7.5. They lost by 8. It was, and then I was like this, like hands over my head. And then there was just like this homeless guy walking by, and he's like, "It'll be all right, man." I was like, "All right, things could be worse than this." So I got back in my car and started driving some more. So yeah, that was my degenerate drive up to Cleveland. And what I learned from the week is, we sort of wrote off Kansas. Some of their depth has been showing. Like they got some 5-star kids that just haven't been playing well. I wrote them off too quick. The Blue Bloods, man. I mean, UNC, just a pathetic effort last night. I think they're done. Kentucky with a terrible loss. And what was another big takeaway that I had? Maybe I gotta check my notes. Mike, let me throw it to you. Any rant or takeaway from the week?
Well, first of all, I want to shout out, I got my Youngstown shirt on here. I appreciate the hard work they did on Friday night. I still think they're going to win the Horizon, which should be, as you brought up on the last episode, a very competitive conference tournament. But I think the Penguins are going to go dancing for the first time. I also got myself into a bad Saturday, and I had been touting to all my Lehigh buddies, this is the time to bet Lehigh against my alma mater, Loyola. And Loyola rolled out probably their best offensive performance in 10 years. They scored 90 points in that game. Just absolute absurdity in terms of variance going their way, shooting. So that one hurt. In terms of a rant, I'm just so sickened by
at least St. Joe's came through the first time you touted St. Joe's.
St. Joe's did come through. So not an awful run in terms of my picks here on the pod. But I am just sickened by the top of the AP poll. And I finally had to look it up. I was like, let me take a year, from the 90s when I really started watching college basketball. Stucky, I know you and I are about the same age. So I was like, 1999. Let me look at the number 1 seeds from the NCAA tournament in 1999 and compare them to who we're probably going to have this year. So in 99, it was Duke, Michigan State, Auburn, and UConn. 10 total losses for those number 1 seeds, and only 1 loss in the entire group to unranked opponents. Like Duke lost 1 game in the regular season. They lost to Kenyon Martin and Steve Logan from that Cincinnati team. Michigan State lost to all ranked teams, all on the road or neutral floors. Auburn was the only one that lost to an unranked opponent. They lost to Arkansas, and UConn lost to 16 Syracuse, number 15 Miami. Looking at bracketmatrix.com right now, the top 4 seeds, Bama, Purdue, Houston, and Kansas, they already have 13 losses total and 4 losses to unranked opponents. And we're only halfway through February here. So it's not our imagination. Comparing apples to apples, one line stinks. And I've just had it. I think it was the tipping point for me. Essentially what you were talking about, my Lehigh buddies were like, all right, give me a late night winner. I was like, well, a live number you can probably jump in on, Arizona -5 against Stanford. How you give up that many points to Stanford? I know it was on their home floor. Like, just shame on me for believing that Arizona had turned the corner with that little win streak.
88 they gave up.
88 points. It's like, I was watching the game. I couldn't believe it. But the amount of open threes they were giving up, second chance points. I know Tubelis had a rough game as well. It's like, I've just kind of had it. And the only thing that I brought up on the last pod, which was when Stuckey says that Tennessee's dead, go ahead on the money line. I did the same thing again. I took Mizzou plus the points, but not on the money line. So at least I'm hitting winners. But at this point in the season, who can you trust? The answer is nobody. And at least I try to bring some factual intel here to the pod that it really is worse than you think.
Yeah, I mean, my list still, like Alabama, I was impressed with their win. I mean, Auburn, I thought Auburn played really well, and they missed every shot down the stretch, but that's a hard, tough environment. Alabama gets a ton of credit for that win. The only team in the country, do you know the only team in the country that doesn't have a loss to an unranked team? I think I could be making this up, but I'm pretty sure it's Kansas. That's it. So even if you look like Houston lost to Temple, right. Alabama lost to Oklahoma, Purdue just lost to Northwestern. I think it's only Kansas. BJ, any rant from the weekend? Anything you took away that you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple rants. I mean, one, I had the under in West Virginia and Texas, and it wasn't looking good to start. And Texas obviously was blowing them out by 30. And it was coming down the stretch. Texas was kind of holding the ball, and it was like, oh, the under's actually looking pretty well here. And then both teams combined for, they
like 30 points in the final minute, right?
Yeah. There were 5 3-pointers in the final 2.5, 3 minutes. They only made 16 total threes the entire game. And of course the under doesn't hit there. And then I had Boston University on the road against Lafayette. They had a +4. They were down 2 with 45 seconds left. They get a charge call with 14 seconds left. So they get the ball. They're rotating the ball around. They have a wide open 3-pointer to win the game. He pump fakes. The defender goes flying by. He makes a runner to tie it, to go to overtime, and they lose by 4 and they push. So that was a pretty horrible way to lose that one. But other than that, it was a decent Saturday. The one big takeaway I had, I was actually pretty impressed with UCLA, and I think there's going to be an opportunity to maybe buy them in the futures market. And they might be the second best team in the country behind Alabama. I mean, that was a very, very impressive win in a bad spot against Oregon. And coming up, they have the patented altitude trip to Utah and Colorado 2 weeks from now. So if they stumble through that, they're sitting at, 14, 15 to 1 right now. If they can drop to 20, they finish out with the 2 Arizona schools at home. And if they win the Pac-12 tournament, there's a world where they could potentially get a 1 seed here. Now, I know, I don't know if it'll matter too much between a 1 or a 2 here, given what we've already mentioned with how weak the 1 seeds are. But I don't know. Throughout the season, I just keep saying, oh, you just can't do it with mid-range jumpers. But then I keep looking back and I'm like, well, UCLA already went to the Final Four, just basically doing mid-range jumpers, and they're pretty automatic. They're shooting 43% from mid-range, so it's an outstanding defense. They turn you over a ton. I was very impressed by that win, and I'm wondering if there's a potential buy opportunity for them in the futures market, or if they are going to potentially be on the 1 line come March.
Yeah, the 1 line, it's kind of wide open as of right now. So they certainly could get there. All right, good stuff there. Let's move on to Tuesday night, tonight's card, and talk some winners. Mike, I'll throw it to you. You got 1 or 2 circled for tonight?
Yeah. Let's start it with Butler getting 10.5 at Nova. Butler's covered 3 straight, including outright wins over St. John's and Xavier at Hinkle. But it's really about Manny Bates. He came back from injury. He was really rusty in those first 3 or 4 games, but his last 2, 17 points per game, 5 boards, 4 blocks in those 2 wins per game, and no foul trouble whatsoever. Him staying on the floor really gives them a shot. And they're up against a Nova team that's one of the worst rebounding teams in the Big East, which kind of negates the fact that Butler's been really bad in almost all the defense or rebounding metrics this season. Nova's going to play at a slow pace. We know this. They're the slowest team in the Big East, 317th possessions per game. And then finally, it's just not the same Jay Wright coach Nova team defensively. They're 208th in 3-point percentage allowed, 205th in effective field goal percentage on the opponent's side. So I think Butler's a live dog here. I think it'll be a single digit win for Nova. So I'm happy to go over that, to get to double digits at 10.5.
Like it. Anything else? Did you have anything else for tonight?
Yeah, I had one other. I think this is the right spot to get the best effort out of the Lobos from New Mexico. They're laying 10.5 against a wounded Wyoming team. Wyoming is 1-5 against the spread on the road this year, failing to cover by an average of 8 points per game. So pretty drastic there. You can get whatever you want when you play Wyoming, in terms of your offense. They're 323rd in effective field goal percentage, 320th in 3-point percentage defense. You're just leaving people wide open left and right. They only force 11 turnovers per game, which is really bad. So in terms of pressure, there's none. And Hunter Maldonado has been a shell of his former self. Scoring's down 4.5 points per game year over year. Assists are cut in half, rebounds are down, and they need him to basically don the Superman cape just to be competitive in a game like this at the Pit. So I'm going to go ahead and back Mashburn and House to have a good game. This is a game New Mexico absolutely has to have. It looks like they ran out of gas after those back-to-back overtime games about 3 weeks ago, and they've lost a couple close games. I think this is their opportunity to get right and get back focused and potentially, be a team that should be taken seriously to receive an at-large bid, but they got to win this one convincingly. I think this is a good number. I'd play it all the way up to New Mexico -13.
Yeah, I mean, House is a game time decision. I think he's going to play, but it's a hammy, and he didn't play on Friday when they lost to Air Force, but they lost 3 straight. It's a great spot. And the Wyoming, Maldonado is just being asked to do so much. They have, they're down to 6 scholarship players. It's just a tough situation for Wyoming, and I'm a big fan of Jeff Linder, but it's tough to see what happened with Wyoming. And like Graham Ike, who's the preseason conference player of the year, doesn't play a single play and then redshirts. And then, you have all the injuries. Then you kick off 3 people get kicked off the team last week. And it's a bad situation for Wyoming. BJ, what do you got for tonight?
Yeah, I was also on the Butler Villanova game. I actually like the over 129 points. So it looks like Chuck Harris is also going to be back for Butler after missing the last 3 games with a concussion. That previous meeting you mentioned, Mike, Manny Bates has obviously been very big for Butler. He didn't play in the previous meeting against Villanova, and Butler still put up 1.22 points per possession. And that's because Villanova, obviously, like you mentioned, a terrible defensive rebounding team, but they're also allowing the second most shots in the country at the rim. And Butler for the season's shooting close to 60% on shots at the rim. So very, very good matchup for Butler. And then the flip side, Butler's pretty average at defending the 3-point line. And obviously Villanova takes a ton of threes. But the other matchup I kind of like, and then with the total, Kansas State, Oklahoma. That was a poor performance from Oklahoma on Saturday. 4 for 17 from behind the arc against Kansas. But they only shot 41% from inside the arc, which is a very big problem if you're going to face Kansas State, because they're an elite 3-point defense. So if you can't score from inside against them, it's very difficult to see how Oklahoma is going to be efficient offensively. And they are dead last in offensive efficiency in Big 12 play. They're dead last in free throw rate, turnover percentage, basically all the areas that Kansas State struggles with defensively. Oklahoma's dead last in the Big 12 offensively. They also do a ton of isolation sets. They're a high frequency cutting team. Kansas State's top 65 in points per possession allowed on both those sets. Kansas State on the flip side, they are shooting the ball well from behind the arc, but the reality is like a lot of their field goal attempts are coming from inside the arc. They're the 4th highest frequency team in terms of shot attempts at the rim, and they're only shooting 59% on those shots, which is 216th in the country. Kansas State also the highest frequency cutting team in the country, but they're 130th in points per possession on those cuts. Oklahoma only allowing around 55% on shot attempts at the rim, and they're also top 90 in points per possession allowed off of cuts. Kansas State's going to want to push the pace, but the reality here is Oklahoma is going to have to slow things down to give them a chance and grind this game out. So I like under 141.5 points in Kansas State, Oklahoma.
Yeah, I played Oklahoma. This game is going to set up. I agree. It's going to set up as a grinder. I played Oklahoma +1. I think they're now -1. I'd still play it smaller. I don't think that they should be an underdog in this spot. And Kansas State, different team away from home this year. They have some shooting regression coming their way in a negative way. Oklahoma, I think, is on the opposite. And I don't think Oklahoma's been as bad as their record has been. And I think you'll get a really good effort. I think Moser still has them buying in. So I don't think that they're like at risk of being like a team that folds up or quits after Saturday. I think you'll get a good effort here against a Kansas State team that's just they're just different away from home. But my favorite bet probably today, I'm gonna go with Auburn -6.5 at home against Missouri. It's number one, it's a great spot. I mean, Missouri's coming off that miraculous win against Tennessee where they won 86-85. They also have been a different team away from home for the most part. But Auburn now has lost 5 of 6. And we know how much better they are at home in the jungle. Their erratic guards just play so much better up until the final 2 minutes of that Alabama game. But from a matchup perspective against Auburn, I mean, you can crush them on the offensive glass. That's not a strength of Missouri. Doesn't have a ton of size. Missouri not that elite at getting to the line, which is a problem for Auburn. The other side of the ball, again, with that lack of size, Auburn should be able to absolutely dominate the offensive glass. So they have been shooting very poorly. They're not a great 3-point shooting team. At home, they're a little better. I do think they still have some positive regression. They'll get some shots up here. And look, I think that they're due to make a little bit more, but if they miss them, they're going to get every offensive rebound in this game. Missouri wants to play faster, which I think, in this game at Auburn on the road, I think that plays right into Auburn's hands. So I think there's a great buy low, sell high spot on Auburn, who could run Missouri out of the gym here. I mean, the Missouri offense has been awesome, but that defense, they just allow you to score too many points. I mean, look, Tennessee put up 85. That in this kind of spot at Auburn, that sets up for very high blowout potential. So give me the Tigers at home in a bounce back on Tuesday night. I think that'll do it for us. Quick little episode Tuesday night. We will be back. Maybe have a guest this week. I'll see. We're going to start to have some conference specialty guests each and every week. We'll add a futures bet to our futures portfolio. We will talk the week that was, and we'll do a little buy low, sell high for a specific conference. So should be a fun episode as always. Thanks to all of you for tuning in as always. In addition to Mike and BJ for joining me, and our audio and video teams on the back end. Make sure you subscribe, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Appreciate all of you guys listening. Let's have a week. We'll catch y'all later in the week. Make sure you catch the 3-man weave also midweek. We'll see you later in the week. Cheers.